Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and welcome to part 9 of my Takashi Miike filmography review. Not a whole lot of introductory stuff to mention in this video, so let's just get rolling here. And remember, all of the movies that I discuss will be listed in the description box below. Now we begin tonight with a superhero film that I actually saw in the cinema, and that is Yatterman from 2009. Now this is an action comedy fantasy movie, I think. Now every week, toy shop owner Gon and his cute assistant Ai battle the evil Dorombo gang. Now this gang is led by femme fatale Doronjo and her assistants, the pig-nosed muscle man Tonsra and rat-faced mecha genius Boyaki. They fight for pieces of the mystical Skull Stone, and every week the Dorombo gang fails, usually due to their own incompetence. Then, there was a mushroom cloud one day. Gon and I did their Yatterman dance, and the gang regrouped the following week to do it all over again. However, some unforeseen events may raise the stakes of their upcoming battles. So my guess is that this film was probably meant for children or young adults, but Miike infuses some sexual innuendos that are rather inappropriate for the kiddies, which creates an amusing viewing experience. So this is actually the first Miike film that I got to see on the big screen in Japan, but I had no idea that he directed it until after I left the theater and I actually checked online. I kind of just showed up to the theater or the cinema, and I picked the poster that seemed to be the most action-y and visually driven, since I knew there would be no subtitles, and it just so happened to be a Miike film, so that was pretty funny. But after watching the robot orgasm scene in this film, I probably should have known that he directed it. It was either him or Sono, you know. So, some of the good things about Yatterman are the numerous action scenes that emphasize bizarre robot fighting and ridiculous gadgets. There's lots of action in this movie, and the battles are creative. They're very creative. My favorite parts are when the big robots go into like a production mode, so to speak, which then means that they produce an army of little robots with various fighting abilities. It's quite fun to watch. Now, the tone in this film is very wacky and cheesy from start to finish, but you'll know that within the opening 10 minutes. So if you like what you see early on in this film, then you'll probably be happy with this. I think it's quite charming in its cheesiness. As an added bonus, Kyoko Fukada plays the cute villainess. It's always nice to see her. She was the lead actress in Kamikaze Girls. Now, in terms of negatives, the fighting does get a little bit tedious during the last 20 or so minutes, I thought. The runtime of 111 minutes does feel a little bit long for a film of this kind. Also, I did think that some of the moments were a bit too silly for their own good. A little bit too silly. But for a strong dose of lighthearted madcap insanity with plenty of WTF moments, Yatterman should fit the bill. It's pretty good entertainment, I think. Now, the availability of this one, it's widely available. Alright, our next film here is the second film in a franchise, and that is Crows 02. This is, of course, a crime drama action flick. Now, this sequel starts where its predecessor left off, with our protagonist Genji attempting to unite the remaining fragmented youth gangs. He suffers a setback, however, when he irresponsibly breaks a no-nonsense or no-violence treaty with a rival gang from Hosen Academy. Now, as it turns out, some dude was released from prison recently, and this dude killed the Hosen Academy's leader a few years ago. Genji's protection of that guy is what sparks the conflict for this film. Now, Crow 02 has a strong opening 20 minutes that moves very fast. It reacquaints us with the characters from the last film, and it introduces us to the big characters that were added to this film. Now, one of the things that I really liked about the first Crow Zero film is that you had characters who were fighting against each other, but transcended good guy, bad guy cliches. The same is true with the sequel. In fact, I really liked the leader of the Hosen group. His name was Taiga, I believe, because he strictly adheres to the rules of fighting that states that you are allowed to beat the crap out of your enemies, but you should not fatally wound them. And this is a theme that is, again, at the focus here. It also spends some time with the other side characters, which are kind of hit or miss in my opinion. I really do not care about that one dude who has scars all over his face and he tries to meet girls all the time. I don't know, it's just, it's only a few scenes in this where they really focus on him, but I feel like those scenes could have been cut out entirely. And speaking of cutting stuff out, the romantic subplot, which also accounts for only a few scenes here or there, it just seems very tacked on and pointless in this, in my opinion. Now, I think they could have cut out, I don't know, they could have cut the 2+ hour runtime down a little bit in this film. But the pacing is still relatively brisk regardless. I don't want you to think that this film has a lot of, boring filler, because it really doesn't. But there were some scenes here or there that if I were the final editor, I would have cut out. Now, fortunately, both Shun Oguri and Takayuki Yamada return in the lead roles, so if you like them in the last Crow Zeroes film, you'll have much to look forward to here. And similar to its predecessor, we are treated to a big final fight, which is entertaining. Also, there's a dart game that's featured at one point in this film, and I really want that game set. Even though it probably does not exist in real life, they were like gigantic darts that they would like throw up against the wall. It was pretty cool. So overall, these two Crow Zero movies are very cool and interesting in how they portray youth gangs, and I definitely recommend both of them. Of course, there was also a Crows Explode film that was released a few years ago that was not directed by Miike. That was pretty good, but not quite as good as the first two in my opinion. So Crows Zero 2 is moderately available. You can usually find it on DVD, I think. All right, we have another sequel here. Another sequel to a prior Miike film, and that is Zebraman 2, Attack on Zebra City. Now, this is a 2010 film, and it's a drama, comedy, action flick. So our first two films tonight were from 2009, and we have now moved into 2010, into Miike's career. So by the year 20 and 25, 15 years after the events of Zebraman, Tokyo has renamed itself Zebra City and has instituted a zebra time starting from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. for 5 minutes. Or, I'm sorry, it should be 5 a.m. to 5:05 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 5:05 p.m., I think. During this time, all crime is legal, and the government allows the zebra police to attack any and all presumed criminals. Eventually, this zebra time results in an attempted murder of Shinichi Ichikawa, also known as Zebraman. Now, surviving the attack by having lost his memories, he must team up with television's fake Zebraman and a young protege to save a mysterious little girl from the Zebra Queen and her zebra police. As if that weren't tough enough, he must also save the world from Zebra Queen's ultimate plan for world domination. Did you get all that? I mean, jeez. So, yes, Zebraman 2, it's a sequel, so let's see how it is here. Now, Miike changes it up a little bit with this sequel. The first Zebraman film was basically set in present times, but Zebraman 2 has some very futuristic visuals, especially with regard to some of the buildings and machinery. There's also a lot of dystopian-inspired slum imagery for the citizens of Zebra City. Most of the citizens aren't living too well. So the overall aesthetics of the film are entirely different from its predecessor. And the actual premise sounds very similar to the, oh, come on, what do they call it? I just had it on the tip of my tongue. The Purge movies from the United States, yes. But I think this film actually predates them, if I got that right. So it's pretty interesting. Now, just like Crows Zero 2, Zebraman 2 has a very energetic opening 20 minutes, which includes a music video. Yeah. Now, typically, in my opinion, music videos in movies feel very artificial. But they actually work in this film because it's part of the storyline. They include it as part of the storyline. So, like, this evil zebra queen is obsessed with staying on top of the music charts in this particular world, which is pretty funny, actually. If that sounds odd, it's just the beginning. So because Miike contributes a healthy dose of oddities and bizarre character interaction, it reminded me a little bit of the Great Yokai War, just a little bit, because we have a little kid who's placed in some weird situations with all these bizarre things going on. Also, the Zebra Queen is over the top insane, but in a good way. She's also quite attractive, which helps. Now, overall, I think the sequel is actually weirder than its predecessor, but that weirdness actually helps to set it apart from other superhero films, especially from America. Now, Sho Aikawa is our lead here again. He reprises his role, and he's good as usual. He plays everything with such a straight face, even when he's confronted with ludicrous events, and that makes everything even more amusing here. Humor is effective overall. There are some funny television show clips, as well as some good one-liners throughout. The flaws are basically the same thing as the first film. Quality of the action is not that great, which gives it kind of a B-movie feel. You're not going to get anything like you're going to get from an Avengers movie or a Marvel film or anything like that. But it's still reasonably entertaining on the action front. The finale does last quite a while, but it does get a little bit monotonous because of that. However, with all that said, I think Zebraman 2 is probably a bit more interesting than its predecessor, if only because it's weirder. Now, Zebraman 2 is widely available, actually. Alright, so we have arrived at what is likely the most popular and highly acclaimed film from Miike from the last decade or so. This is actually a remake of a 1963 film of the same name, but I think this is one of those cases where the remake is actually better than the original film. And that is 13 Assassins from 2010. This is an action drama. Now, set in the 1840s, as the Tokugawa shogunate faces extinction, a corrupt lord freely rapes, tortures, and murders his own citizens. He is protected because the shogun is his half-brother. However, the justice minister realizes the threat posed if this lord should further ascend, and hires a trusted older samurai to ambush and murder him. The samurai gathers 11 more of his brethren to be his assassins, among them his own nephew, and comes up with a plan of ambushing the lord on his official journey from Edo back to Akashi. Now, this is similar in ways to a typical samurai action flick that you might see, but Miike is at the helm in this, which means that there are some splashes of absurdity and uncomfortable violence on display. Now, for example, the villain is a calmly acted sociopath who engages in some heinous acts of violence near the beginning of this film. And these scenes automatically add an edge to this that establishes it establishes real stakes that are at hand here. It also helps to create a despicable bad guy that, may provoke some bloodlust on the part of the viewer. You really want to see this guy get taken down. And there's no questioning that the conflict in this film is very strong. Drama and characters are pretty impressive as well. From the protagonist standpoint, you have a collection of likable people who have come together for a common cause to benefit the people. These guys have good chemistry together, and you really do get a feel of a team atmosphere when they're together. The actors obviously help matters. You got Koji Akusho is, he's solid as usual, and all of the supporting actors are quite good, a few of which will be recognizable to you. Now, the highlight of this entire movie is the final fight that is set in a booby-trapped village It's very long and very impressive with a massive body count. 13 Assassins is almost worth watching for that sequence alone. It's that good. It certainly proves without question that Miike can direct action scenes. Now, one thing that annoyed me a little bit about this movie was the character decision making. At times, I did not understand why certain decisions were made in this film. For example, the protagonists used a very effective battle strategy near the end, but then they change it up for no apparent reason. Like, they just keep pummeling these bad guys' armies, and then they're like, okay, let's just stop that and do something else now. And I think that it could have transitioned a little better. I don't want to give anything away, but I think the transition could have been a little better too, in terms of the change of tactics there. There are times where a character earlier on in the film would have an opportunity to kill a bad guy, but they would hesitate for no discernible reason. I don't know if it was like an honor thing or what, but I don't know, I just didn't get that. Sometimes I might have missed something, but it's, there were times where I think they could have struck throughout the film quite easily. But, those are kind of minor gripes in an overall very solid film. So I definitely recommend 13 Assassins, which is widely available, fortunately. Now, next is another Miike film that I got to see in a cinema in Japan. And this one is called Harakiri, Death of a Samurai, also known as Ichimei, from 2011. This is a drama. Now, this is set in the 1600s, okay? A poverty-stricken Ronin visits the home of a feudal lord and requests to commit ritualistic suicide in the palace courtyard because life has become too difficult to survive. Now, apparently, this was an oft-used bluff that Ronin used because in many cases they would receive compensation from the lord and be sent back home with some much-needed cash. Well, this particular lord has decided to crack down on this trend by actually forcing these Ronin to commit suicide. So he promptly tells our protagonist a story of one such Ronin who met that fate. But there's much more to the story that is revealed as things progress. Now, you can probably understand, to an extent, the Lord's point of view in this matter, but at the same time, the shogun had practiced a warped sense of honor during these times. Like anything else, you get a bunch of people together, you put them in power for a while, and there's almost always going to be corruption and abuse of power over time. It's humanity for you, right? History has proven this. So the main theme of this film is basically this. Do you feign a false sense of honor in the face of your people if you're running things? Your people are starving to death. You know what I mean? And they're coming to you for assistance. And yeah, they might be, kind of, I would say, overstating their desire to kill themselves, for the hopes of receiving some type of compensation for their services, because they're having trouble even surviving on the home front. So, it's kind of a delicate situation, but while you can understand the Lord's perspective, really, you got to side with the people on this one. You know what I mean? You got to divvy out some of that wealth and cash and help the people. Now, this is a remake of the 1962 original film, which was directed by Masaki Kobayashi and starred Tatsuya Nakadai. That was a very good film, by the way. Definitely check that one out if you haven't seen it. Now, this remake is similar in story, but it's more grimy and visceral in style. It's a very effective effort at showing that many of these people had lived in poverty. You know what I mean? You really get the feel of it. You get the feel of the desperation that a family has in simply trying to survive and putting enough food on the table. Now, consequently, the tone of this film gets pretty dark at times. Viewer beware of one long, agonizing suicide sequence near the beginning. It's not graphic in its violence, but it's hard to sit through. So this film is very effective in that regard. It's deliberately paced, as you might expect from a film of this kind, but everything is developed nicely, and the acting is really top-notch in this. Ibizo Ichikawa is fantastic in the lead role. He's only been in a small handful of movies so far, but I hope to see more of him in the future. And also, Hikari Mitsushima and Eita are quite good in this as well, in supporting roles. Now, in terms of pure quality, this is one of Miike's best in recent memory, and is another piece of evidence that proves that, without question, he can make a high-quality, traditional film with dramatic impact. Now, I'm probably in the minority for saying this, but Harakiri, Death of a Samurai, is every bit as good as 13 Assassins. I think some people get hung up over the lack of action in this film, which distracts them from all the good historical, cultural, and dramatic content on display. It's impressive stuff. And this came right after 13 Assassins. So you have people going into 13 Assassins and they end up with this phenomenal finale action scene. And you go into Harakiri and you're expecting the same thing, if you're not familiar with the original film. And I think that hurt this film's perception to the general public. If this film came out before the 13 Assassins remake, I think it would have been received even better than it has up to this point. So I definitely recommend this. You have to go in with the right expectations. Now, this is widely available on DVD and streaming and all that stuff. All right. Now, our next film here, something a little bit different here. And we've seen before that Miike has directed films involving little kids, the Great Yokai War being one example, the Young Thugs films being other examples. And this one is called Ninja Kids from 2011. This is a comedy action film. Now, Miike directs this wacky kids film about elementary school boys who train to be ninjas. Rantaro was born into a low-class ninja family. His parents hope he can one day become an elite ninja and make his family proud. Rantaro, bearing his parents' expectations, enters the Ninja Academy. Now, at this academy, he becomes friends with Shinbei, the son of a wealthy merchant family, and Kiramaru, who lost his father in the war. Now, after a rival ninja emerges and aims his sights on a family, the kids spring into action and try to save them. Now, I usually find it quite interesting to watch movies where, grammar school or elementary school kids are the main characters. For example, Gakkou no Kaiden from the 1990s, it was a 4-part film series, are some of my favorite horror films because, the little kids are thrown into unfamiliar situations. Ninja Kids had the potential to be something special like those films, but in the end, it's just a watchable time waster. Now, some of the set designs in this film are really neat. The natural environments are nice. There are also some crazy hairstyles and makeup to check out that were kind of interesting. It is cool to see these little tiny tot kids, in little ninja outfits performing some crazy flips and weapon attacks once in a while. The problem is that Miike never really puts much effort into the fight choreography into this one. So you basically get a small handful of cartoonish exchanges that are mixed in with lots of running around. You know what I mean? It's passably entertaining for sure, but it could have been better. There was a Thai film from 2009 called Power Kids that had some legitimately cool action scenes involving young children, so I would recommend that film before this one, if you're looking for something like that. Another negative to Ninja Kids is that there are a lot of characters, but not much character development. The ending is also a bit drawn out and rather tedious at times. Also, this gets a little bit too silly for its own good, with a few fart and poop jokes, which I'm not generally a fan of. Overall, however, it's decent enough for throwaway entertainment. It's watchable, but not something I would go out of my way to recommend. So Ninja Kids is moderately available. I think you can find a copy on eBay. Last time I checked, it was on eBay. All right. Now, in the last part of this playlist, I covered a Miike film that was based on a video game. That film was Yakuza Like a Dragon, and was legitimately entertaining. And guess what? Miike directed another film that was based on a video game, and it's actually entertaining. And that is, of course, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. 2012, this is a drama comedy mystery film. The court system, burdened by the massive amount of crimes being committed, introduces a new trial system, the bench trial system. Both prosecution and defense face each other in open court and have 3 days to make their case before a judge renders a verdict. Now, shortly before winning his last case, proving his best friend Larry Butts innocent of murder, rookie defense attorney Phoenix Wright is thrust into the limelight after the murder of his mentor, Mia Fey. The accused murderer is Mia's younger sister, Maya Fey, who comes from a family line of spirit mediums. Now, Wright faces off with childhood friend and rival prosecutor Miles Edgeworth on the case, but Miles himself gets into trouble involving a related cold case, and only our good protagonist can solve this mystery. So this film has kind of an odd style to it, with offbeat character designs. Hairstyles are absurd, high-tech courtrooms and sets, etc. So, for example, holograms are frequently used in the courtroom to show different pieces of evidence. And that's a good thing, because it adds a little bit of spice to the courtroom proceedings. I mean, let's be honest. We've seen courtroom scenes at least 1 million times by now in American television. I even find it hard to watch those shows anymore, just because I've seen them so many times. So I kind of found it relieving that Miike decided on a more unorthodox style here. The proceedings themselves are energetic, due mostly to the special debate format that's used, and that makes them fun to watch. Some pretty basic logic is used early on, but eventually there are some clever twists that may catch the viewer off guard. The script here is well written, I think. Lead actor and actress are very likable and carry the film well. Ryo Ishibashi, the lead actor from Audition, and Mitsuki Tanimura, the lead actress from God's Puzzle, which we covered previously on this playlist, have small supporting roles. As an added bonus, there are some legitimately funny scenes in this film as well. So it's really ironic when you think about it that Hollywood as an entire industry fails miserably at making movies based on video games, but Miike himself, one man, has made 2 that are legitimately entertaining. So it's a world record that may never be broken based on historical trends. So that's pretty cool. This is a good film. Now, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, is, again, moderately available. You can find a copy on eBay, usually with subs. Alright, we're down to the last film tonight. This one, a little dodgy, but also a little bit different. And that is For Love's Sake, also known as The Legend of Love and Sincerity, 2012. This is a comedy, drama, action musical film. Now, this film begins with a brief animated prologue set in 1961, in which Ai, played by Emi Takai, the daughter of a well-respected Tokyo family, is skiing down a snowy hill and crashes into young Makoto, played by Satoshi Sumabuki, resulting in a huge scar on the boy's forehead. Now, 11 years later, in 1972, Tokyo, Ai is a senior in high school when Makoto shows up and is attacked by a local gang of boys. He fights them off single-handedly, but Ai jumps in to stop them once and for all. Now, the police arrive and arrest Makoto, who is to be sent to a reform school. But soon after, he is released and transferred to a prestigious prep school where Ai is a popular student at the top of her class in academics and sports. Now, unfortunately for them, Yakuza conflict threatens to tear their friendship apart. Actually, their romance apart. So this is an adaptation of a manga from the 1970s, actually, which was made into some films and television series during that decade. This has a good cast in it, for sure. Takei has been in some very good stuff, like the Rurouni Kenshin trilogy. Sumabuki has been in a bunch of solid flicks, including World of Kaneko, Judge, Smuggler, Villain, Dororo, All About My Siblings, etc. He's been in a lot of good flicks. Now, Sakura Ando has a small supporting role as well, but she does not get much runtime. So if you're a fan of hers, don't go into this expecting much from her. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, For Love's Sake is a flimsy movie, especially in terms of story and character development, which are bare bones despite the 133-minute runtime. It feels like it wastes that time because there's very little depth that's developed. The entire film revolves around the romantic relationship, but it never really shines that much. Given the film's shallowness overall, the length could have been reduced a bit, in my opinion. In addition, the fights lack any impressive choreography because they rely on repetitive kicks and punches. But with that said, I do think that this is a watchable fluff piece for a number of reasons. First, it's a genre bender that's rife with humor, gangster violence, musical interludes, and punches to the face, which occasionally involve girls and children. That's an odd combination that you don't really see that often. Now, the songs themselves range from good to mediocre, but they're almost always played for laughs and work quite well in that regard. And plus, you have, again, like I said, a good lead cast. Now, the comedy in this is quite deadpan, which is a great choice in this case. The highlight being the stage play style flashback of one of the characters' childhoods, which is a fantastic scene. And some of the sets are nice and colorful. So, this is one that will not change the minds of those who have grown disenchanted with Miike's recent output, but could be a decent diversion for his more passionate fans. So, For Love's Sake, again, moderately available, just like the last few films. Check eBay, you'll probably be able to find it with subtitles. Alright, so that wraps up part 9 of my Takashi Miike filmography review. Some of the higher priority titles would be 13 Assassins, Harakiri, Death of a Samurai, and Crow 02. But as I always say, if any of the other titles pique your interest, check them out. My next favorite after those would probably be Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, which is legitimately good stuff. And be sure to join me for part 10 of this playlist, which will bring us right up to the present day for Miike's filmography. I'm going to review most of the films he released between 2012 and 2007. I haven't seen all of them yet, because not all of them are available. But we'll cover most of those. And I'm also going to look at a few more criticisms of this director that you will likely see on the internet. Now, any films that I don't get to for part 10 that are released after part 10 is uploaded onto YouTube, I'll review separately. I already reviewed Blade of the Immortal. If you want to check that out before part 10 hits, check that out on my channel. At this point, I reviewed as many of this guy's films as I can, so any of his additional films that pop up, I'm going to review on this YouTube channel. It's almost obligation at this point. So, yes, as always, we will see you next time.